You should lay down your life for someone such as me. I'd spend a lifetime wondering why the beauty of heaven is here in my heart, and I know there can be no great love. The beauty of heaven is here in my heart, and I know there can be no greater love for someone such as me. No greater love than this.
Well, thank you, Ann and Paula, for opening up for our Good Friday service. And for this Good Friday service, we come together to pray and remember the way shower, the model of our possibilities. Of course, that way shower is Jesus the Christ. This is a day that we actually commemorate the immediate prelude to a story of victory, a story of the Christ Spirit's triumph over the most horrific conditions. And so we come together to experience a retelling of the supreme test of Jesus' life. This ancient sacred story illustrates that we, having faith in God, can rise above all earthly limitations to attain the fullness of spiritual life. And so part of our worship team this evening, I'd just like to introduce you to them. Most of you already know Reverend Deborah Phillips to my left, your right. Of course, our music by Paula Mandela and Ann Roach, and Reverend Louise Bezark assisting along the way. And Deborah is about to light the Christ candle. And we light this candle to symbolize the everlasting light that shines within all of us. It is the Christ light that clears away all darkness. And so to prepare for this mostly contemplative experience this evening, let us commune with this presence through prayer. We feel and sense our oneness with the divine, a presence that is beyond words, beyond human description. But we can identify its qualities, the qualities of divine and perfect love, and peace, and harmony, wholeness, imagination, and strength. Everything that is good and perfect, we give our attention to these things because we know that whatever we focus on begins to expand in our life. And so we expand on the life energy that can never be taken away, can never die, no matter what we may be going through, no matter what may be happening in the external world, we can lean on this presence. And as we lean on this presence, we're able to move through any situation that we face. We are the vessels and the vehicles of this quality of God presence. And so in the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak, the actions that we take are in tune with this, are in integrity with this. And as we practice more and more of these principles of the Spirit of the living God and making the activity of our life, we begin to radiate from within the depths of our being, our true self, which is the Christ in each and every one of us, the hope of glory, which is that part of God within each and every person. So we come under this principle of the divine's presence, make it the activity of all that we do. And along the way, we can say that when you see me, you see the presence that sent me, because that presence and I and all of us are one. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. Well, at Christmas, we celebrated the birth of Jesus of Nazareth and discovered the metaphysical, the symbolic meaning of his birth. We talked of his rising in his consciousness, his awareness, the so-called lost years where he traveled and where he studied, and then returning right back to where he came from to begin his ministry. So we come into the story today on Good Friday. Jesus is under a death sentence and hangs on a cross between two thieves. And we may wonder, how did it come to this? So before we enter that symbolic or metaphysical implication of Jesus' last hours on earth, we consider what transpired during those 3 years. Certainly many good things came about during those years. There were miracles and healings, turning water into wine, and many wonderful teachings like the Sermon on the Mount. These are very high consciousness moments that we prefer to focus on. But there were other moments where Jesus openly defied and challenged the Jewish authority. He challenged the Pharisees when he declared that what comes out of the mouth is more important than what goes into the mouth. A direct attack on the ancient dietary laws. And of course, he was admonished for healing people on the Sabbath, but he did not stop. And there were 7 instances of Jesus healing on the Sabbath. He also charged through the temple courtyard and overturned the money changers' tables. And then on top of all of that, he rode into Jerusalem just as King Solomon had, with people waving palms and proclaiming him the King of the Jews. The truth is that Jesus was always poking at, needling authority. For his message, no matter what, was always one of compassion, one of divine love. It was a message of forgiveness and understanding. And it was this very teaching that required him to push back at the limited traditional thinking of the Pharisees. And so looking at this dynamic, we can see that Jesus the Christ had constant pressure to stray from his pure spiritual path. Certainly would have made his life much easier if he simply played by the rules. But he chose over and over again to follow his innate spiritual guidance. He chose to continue making drastic comments about the observations that he had and take actions that defied the religious law of the time. And so he pushed for higher and higher awareness among his followers, higher and higher consciousness for them. But for most of these 3 years, Jesus' life was not in danger. And at the time, one might very well say, well, yes, he can get away with all this because there are no consequences. And so the question might be, what would Jesus really do when it came down to life and death? Would his teachings hold? Would he fulfill the purpose for which he was born? The tension between Jesus and the Pharisees and the establishment had been rising for some time, and he intentionally agitated them by writing in Jerusalem as had King Solomon, telling people, proclaim him the King of the Jews. He knew this would push things way beyond their comfort zone, and there would be pushback. But he held his ground. He stood in truth. He had many opportunities to dodge this experience and simply disappear. In fact, the disciples even encouraged him to do so. He had one last meal with his disciples. He gave them a final teaching and went out to pray. It's not that he was without moments of doubt. We recall the poignant moment in which, in the garden, the night before his arrest, he prayed for this cup to pass by him. But he stayed, was arrested, and he could have recanted to Pilate or Herod, but he refused to engage them. He had another opportunity on the cross, but again let it pass. As we find him on the cross today, he is in pain, hungry, dehydrated, dirty, and still teaching. When he examined the last 7 statements, as we examine them, Jesus made them on the cross. We find that they embody his entire message.
So this is a meditative service, and in order to maintain the flow of the meditative part of the service, we will receive the love offering now, as we know that as we circulate and we give and receive and give, it forms the perfect circle. So let us hold our gifts and bless them together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Be still, my soul. The Lord is on your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly rain. Through stormy ways leads to a joyful end. Oh, be still, my soul. The waves and winds still know, for needless pain we bear. All because we do not everything to God in prayer. Be still, my soul.
Metaphysically, we do not view the crucifixion of Jesus as a tragedy. We view it as a step towards great victory. And Jesus assured us that the same victory illustrated in his story can be attained by us. During his crucifixion, Jesus gave us 7 statements. These statements are contained in scattered form all over the 4 Gospels. We simply arrange them in a convenient way. Each of the 7 statements made by Jesus may be considered as a continuation of his teachings, and like all of his teaching, they are especially appropriate for us today. They are a unique form of highly condensed metaphysical teachings, almost a kind of verbal shorthand. But for those with eyes to see, they contain a significant spiritual meaning. The crucifixion itself symbolizes a process of crossing out or eliminating that which is no longer needful for our continued unfoldment. What has fulfilled its purpose in us must either be lifted to a higher level of expression in consciousness or let go of completely. Jesus' crucifixion illustrates both of those meanings. The 7 statements by Jesus from the cross verbalize 7 great realizations of truth, which are necessary for our continued spiritual growth and unfoldment.
So we begin with the statement, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Inner forgiveness is the mightiest of spiritual acts. Without it, nothing in the nature of real spiritual progress can be achieved. Jesus made this the first of his 7 statements because of its primary importance. It is significant that he does not claim to be doing the forgiving. He acknowledges God as the only forgiving power. Human beings would be wise to do the same. We should try to realize that it is really not my forgiveness or your forgiveness, but is the forgiving love of God itself, the love intelligence of our great universe. In fact, we can say the presence, the power, the love of God is never in a state of unforgiveness, because nothing we can do can stop God from loving us, supporting us, uplifting us. At best, we can frustrate this presence, but we can't stop it. It makes it much easier to forgive when we realize that it is not something personal which I must cook up for myself. All I do is consent. I consent to let the loving power of God simply be directed through me on behalf of others who need such forgiveness. For they know not what they do. If people really knew what they were doing when doing something wrong, they simply would not go through with it. Behind all offenses, there is a lack of understanding. Even a person who thinks he knows what he or she is doing when they harm others actually do not. Thus, on Friday morning, when at the 3rd hour, 3 crosses were raised of Golgotha, and Jesus was placed on the middle cross with the thief on either side of him. He was able to look down at his tormentors and say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do."
Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. I hear you pray for those who torture you. These are the words that tear my grudges all apart. Create in me a tender heart. Create in me a tender heart.
As we hear these first words of Jesus from the cross, we say, "Loving God, we bless those who persecute us. In doing so, the Christ Spirit cleanses us of the injustices we have committed and those that have been committed toward us. To those we have offended, we ask for forgiveness. To those who have hurt us, we offer forgiveness. I freely forgive and am forgiven through the Christ that dwells within me. I freely forgive and am forgiven through the Christ that dwells within me." I invite you to take that affirmation and say it quietly to yourself in the silence of your being, as you now feel the cleansing action of the Christ's presence, forgiveness within you. I freely forgive and am forgiven through the Christ that dwells within me.
Today, you will be with me in paradise. What is paradise? Where is it? Jesus knew, and he told us about it many times in his teachings. Basically, paradise is a name given to a here and now consciousness of oneness with God. Where is oneness with God? It is here. When is oneness with God? It is now. Jesus spoke these words to one of the thieves being crucified with him. Charles Fillmore wrote that these two thieves symbolize the past and the future. Memories of the past can rob us. Anxiety about the future can rob us. But spiritual awareness, Jesus, never robs us, but rather gives us strength and protection. The thief to whom Jesus spoke represents the future. What does spiritual awareness in us, or Jesus, say about our future? Does it tell us to fear it? Does it urge us to protect ourselves from it? No. Spiritual awareness says to our future, "Today you will be with me in paradise." In other words, spiritual awareness says we can bring our own concern for our future into our here and now consciousness of oneness with God. We need not project into the future, but rather bring all thoughts about the future into paradise. Paradise is our oneness with God, and it is here. It is now. It is forever. As the day progressed, one of the thieves railed at Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other thief rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we are condemned justly, for we are receiving the due reward for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." And he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus spoke, saying, truly I say unto you, today you will be with me in paradise.
You turn your head to address a dying thief. Today you'll be in paradise with me. These are the words where every hopeless soul must start. Create in me a trusting heart. Create in me a trusting heart.
As we return to that quiet place within, we carry with us the knowledge that whenever we turn to the Christ of our being and ask for help, it is freely given. In faith, I turn to the Christ within and know that this day and every day I am one with my good, one with my God. And silently reflect upon this affirmation. In faith, I turn to the Christ within and know that this day and every day I am one with my good, one with my God.
Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother. These words were spoken to Mary and, according to tradition, to the disciple John. Mary and John were not mother and son, but Jesus was speaking from a level of the highest understanding concerning the truth of human relationships. One of the greatest realizations that can come to a person is the realization of his true relationship to every other human being in the human family. Whatever biological ties may exist, the metaphysical ties are stronger and more important. In spirit, we are each other's mother, brother, and sister. To realize this and to accept this will guarantee great steps forward in spiritual unfoldment. Jesus saw his mother and said to her, "Woman, behold your son." Looking at John, he said, "Son, behold your mother." And from that hour, John took Mary as his own.
Then unto Mary, woman, behold your son. Behold your mother, your dying words to John. These words began a family of which I'm part. Create in me a holy heart. Create in me a holy heart.
We are reminded by this third statement that it is our responsibility to provide for those who are unable to care for themselves. We fulfill our human responsibilities willingly and with great care and love. And so we affirm, as I unfold spiritually, I fulfill my every obligation responsibly, wisely, and lovingly. So in the quietness of your own being, embody these statements as we return to that reflective presence within. As I unfold spiritually, I fulfill my every obligation responsibly, wisely, and lovingly.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Jesus is here once again teaching by making himself an example. Notice this statement is a question. Jesus was probably not asking that question for his own sake, because he knew the truth. That was the real answer. But he spoke the question to show us what is often in our own hearts as we seek to follow him. The question states a wondering us as to why we are feeling separated from God. Even when we know better, the feeling may creep over us before we are even fully aware of it. We wonder why we once again feel that God has indeed forsaken us. We ask why. There is nothing abnormal about this. It happens to the best of persons. In these periods of darkness, we find strength in the Christ Spirit within to persevere. God is there even in our darkest, most painful and confusing moments. And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. Jesus cried with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Your darkest hour, you cried out from the tree. My God, why have you forsaken me? These words of anguish pierce me through just like a dart. Create in me a thankful heart. Create in me a thankful heart.
As we experience spiritual crucifixion, we may feel, as Jesus did, as he uttered the fourth statement, that even God seems to have forsaken us. In these periods of darkness, we find strength in the Christ Spirit within to help us persevere. God is there even in our darkest and most painful and confusing moments. God's love comforts me. God's power strengthens me in my hour of need. As we turn to the silence, repeat quietly to yourself and embody this affirmation. God's love comforts me. God's power strengthens me in my hour of need.
I thirst. This is an affirmation of a need. It is an asking. The asking is immediately followed by the meeting of that need. Jesus was given a sponge soaked with a mixture of vinegar and gall or myrrh, a soothing drink. Jesus had previously taught, ask and you shall receive. Here he gives us an example of practicing what he preached. There are times when a person finds him or herself in a situation where things look hopeless. During such times, they will feel an overpowering thirsting after righteousness. What should one then do? Jesus said, ask and you will receive. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. With God, there is no situation that is hopeless. For this presence, this power is mightier than any circumstance. And so after this, Jesus, knowing that all was complete, simply said, I thirst.
You said I thirst, yet it was not for wine. You thirst for love from desert souls like mine. And with these words of flowing river you impart, create in me a loving heart. Create in me a loving heart.
There comes a time in spiritual unfoldment when we finally know that the body is not limited to the physical. It is the temple of the living God, and its full needs can only be met by drinking of the living water, the life of the Christ's presence. We now return to that silence. And as we do, we quietly affirm these words. I drink of the living water of spirit, and every need of my mind and body is fulfilled. I drink of the living water of spirit, and every need of my mind and body is fulfilled. Take these words into your awareness in the quietness for a few moments.
It is finished. Everything that happens in a person's life is part of a cycle of learning, growing, and unfolding. Each event, experience, each relationship, each victory, each defeat all are factors in a great overall pattern of evolution. One of the most difficult lessons a person may have to learn is to recognize when something has fulfilled its role in life and is now to be seen as finished business. Some people never seem to learn to recognize when something is finished. This pertains to other persons, possessions, jobs, pleasures, but it especially pertains to cycles of experience in our learning process in life. If we have to go through certain difficult or painful experiences, we should try to learn the lessons they contain as quickly as possible. When we feel we have seen the lesson, then it is wise to say, as Jesus said, it is finished. Hold no grudges, nurse no feelings, no hurt feelings, carry no unhappy memories. if it is finished, let it go. It has done its work. Greater good is now in store, and we let the past bury the past. It is finished. When we come to the limit of human effort and know that we have done all that we can do, we keep our faith, and we know that with God, all things are possible. We have done all we can humanly do, and we totally surrender our will to God. When Jesus had received drink, he uttered his sixth statement, "It is finished."
Then it is finished, your work on earth was done. For in 3 days your battle would be won. These are the words with which you crown your works of art. Create in me a perfect heart. Create in me a perfect heart.
When we come to the limit of human effort and know that we have done all that we can do, we keep our faith and know that with God, all things are possible. We totally surrender to God. And let's go back into our quiet with this affirmation. The living, loving Christ of my being works for my highest good in all matters that I release to it. I let go and I let God. The living, loving Christ of my being works for my highest good in all matters that I release to it. I let go and I let God.
Abba, into thy hands I commit my spirit. In the beginning, God. In every ending, God. God is our all in all. Jesus has gone through a complete cycle in which we had accomplished exactly what he had come here to do. He had brought that cycle to a climax in the symbolism of the drama of the crucifixion. His words, he chooses to verbalize that climax, are in the statement which is, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. People often wonder, what is going to happen to me next? If we will follow the example of Jesus, we can know that we can safely place ourselves, our lives, our bodies, our future in God's hands. We're not taking any risks when we do this. God is completely dependable because God cannot be changed. When Jesus gives us his example of commending his whole spirit into God's hands, he is once again demonstrating his own teachings. God is the answer to everything. God is the meaning behind everything. God is the only fate in store for his children, and God is absolute good. There was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. And then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, Abba, into your hands I commit my spirit. And having said this, he breathed his last breath.
Into your hands, Father, I commend my breath. Your final prayer as
as Jesus spoke the seventh statement. He surrendered his spirit. Not my will, but yours be done. Into the care and keeping of God, I give myself and all that concerns me. I rest from my labors and let God's will for good come forth in and as my life. And so we'll affirm one more affirmation and go into the silence and embody that affirmation. And it states, I release and let go of my concerns. God's will be done in me now. I release and let go of my concerns. God's will be done in me now. Let's go into the silence and embody those words.
Christ has nobody now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks, compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, you are his body. Christ has nobody now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks, compassion on this world. Christ has nobody now on earth but yours.
This concludes our service. Please leave in silence and go in peace. We will see you Sunday morning to hear the rest of the story.